today's Transport Evolved, UK Model S pricing, new EVs on the way, and virus-grown battery packs. Coming up next on Transport Evolved. Transport Evolved is sponsored by audiblepodcast.com. To claim your free audiobook from a selection of over 85,000 growing titles for your iPod or MP3 player, head to www.audiblepodcast.com/Transport Evolved. And by your kind donations. To make a gift to the show or to set up a monthly subscription, head to www.transportevolved.com. We thank you for your kind support. And proud to support Chronovirus, the latest book by Long Island author Aaron Crocco. To find out more and get a free chapter, head to www.aaroncrocco.com. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to episode number 174 of Transport Evolved, recorded on Sunday, November 17th, 2013. My name is Nikki Gordon-Bloomfield.
And I'm Mark Chatterley. How are you today, Nikki?
Blank. How about you?
Blank. I'm okay. You can see me today, so woo, hello.
I can see you, which is lovely. We're starting the show without our guest today because he's got young kids, and as someone who has kids myself, I can tell you, it's sometimes you need just to get on. Well done, by the way. Thank you. Talking about kids, thank you so much for doing TEN on Friday this week. You've done 2 10s in a row now.
2 10s in a row.
2 10s, you've done 20 now.
Yes, I've done 20 10s. What? Yes.
But you really saved me. For those of you who didn't watch, go and watch it now because Mark's fantastic. I think he's after my job.
There might be one small graphical error that no one but Nikki's noticed so far. So, that's quite good.
Yes, maybe if they watch, maybe if they notice it, maybe if someone notices it, we'll send them a free DVD with all the archives of all the old shows on or something.
You've got to find the archives of the old shows.
I don't know. We'll sort something out. Anyway, we were going to have Aaron Crocco on the show today. I hope he's okay. We're just going to carry on, and he will pop up on Skype, I'm sure, and we'll get talking. But let's talk about the week's news. So Tesla Model S gets official UK pricing mark this week.
Yes, and good pricing, or not it's in the sense of I can buy one or you can buy one or most people can buy one, but good prices in the sense of it pits it really competitively against the other cars in the market of that sort of size and ilk, I guess.
Yeah, and well, for £50,280 on the road. After £5,000 government grants, but that does include things like the mandatory registration fee and all of that. In the States, they call it handling fees, but that's not quite what we call it over here. But it's still a really good price, I think. £50,280. That puts it does put it into, high-end BMW Merc territory, quite rightly so. And that's the 60 kilowatt-hour battery pack Model S. But one of the things that I suppose it's worth mentioning is the UK's not really that big, is it, Mark?
No, not at all. We're really quite a small country, although we like to pretend we're quite large.
We do. But I mean, case in point, from my house to central London, and I'm kind of on the Severn Estuary. I'm in Bristol, basically, which is kind of the west side. It's not the westernmost point. People get upset if I say I'm in the West Country because I'm not. But I'm also not in the Midlands. I'm somewhere in between. But from there to London is only 130 miles.
Yeah.
And it's similar for you, isn't it?
Yeah, maybe a little bit more, about 10 miles more.
So for a Model S, you could actually, even a Model S base model, 60 kilowatt hour Model S, you could drive from the middle of nowhere, in your case, all the way to London and do that on one charge. Now, how many charges do you have to do if you do it in the Leaf?
I would have to 2 or 3 rapid charges I'd need before I got to London. Oh no, to be on the safe side, I could probably do it in 2 if I was conservative.
Yeah, I mean it's a bit like me. I mean I can do it in 2, But, last time I went, I actually did it in 4 because I had the facility of rapid chargers along the way, and I stopped multiple times because I wanted to go at 70 miles an hour with the heating on.
But it does completely change those kinds of journeys. When you start talking about being able to go from where I live to London, which is 100 and however many miles we just said, and not needing a rapid charge, that completely shines a light onto this network that Nissan and Mitsubishi and Citroen and BMW are just coming into the market with a car that, again, will use essentially the same network because it's the same distance it can travel. Audi, all of these other manufacturers are bringing out cars which, if you want to go on a journey that's 100 miles, have to stop twice.
Yes, yeah. And but I think we need to acknowledge that most people do only drive 40 or below, sometimes even 20 or below miles a day. I mean, BMW has told us on numerous occasions the average mileage in the UK is something like
26 miles, I believe.
Yeah, but average annual mileage is in the single thousands, not tens of thousands.
Yeah, it's about 9, I believe.
It's about 9,000. So we are very different to the US, and I think that means a lot of people are going to go for the base model S, the 60 kilowatt hour car, for 50,000 to 280. Now, obviously, you add extra bits and bobs, that price is going to go up. If you add all the bells and whistles, you get the P85 performance model with the 85 kilowatt hour battery pack, etc., etc., etc. That will send you into 6 figures, won't it?
Yeah,
it'll be 100 and some thousand. Yeah, just in 6 figures. The nice thing though about this all is that the cars will come in March. There's no right-hand drive cars yet at the Tesla store. I was there yesterday. Thanks to everyone there who made my family feel very welcome. I took my family up there because they hadn't. Obviously, I get to cover these cars. You get to cover these cars, but my family had never seen a Model S in the flesh before. So I took my eldest and my wife up yesterday, and we had a lovely trip. And she was really impressed. Actually, my wife, she was really impressed by the tech in the Model S. I don't think I've convinced her to buy one yet, and we can't afford one anyway. But there we go. So the question now is, how many people are going to buy Model S's in the UK? Elon Musk, obviously, we talked about this last week, advisor to the UK, there might be a conflict of interest. I think we're safe to say there will be a conflict of interest there. And we've got this situation where I think some people will look at the Model S and go, well, it's a bit pricey. I'll stick with my Leaf, or I'll stick with my Ampera, or I'll stick with my i3 or whatever else. But I think a lot of people will go, maybe we stick off EVs for another year or two and then buy one. So maybe we'll see people extending their petrol use a little bit more so that they can get a Model S. I don't know. It's
interesting. It's created a second gap as well.
Yes,
there's kind of an entrance gap to EVs where you have to have 20-odd thousand to buy a new EV. And after that, you've kind of got everything bunched in this kind of 25 to 32,000 pound range. There's a few exceptions I understand, but that's kind of the range. And then it jumps straight up to 50. And so there is this sort of middle ground where people should be pitching cars, and people should be pitching cars lower down as well.
It has led to some arguments this weekend on Twitter, which I'm not going to go into details now because I've got a couple of blog posts and rants that I want to write about this. People talking about range estimates for cars and how there's been some claims that people have been buying EVs based on what dealers have said. This car will get X miles. And then they've bought the car and then they've got upset because it hasn't achieved the range that they said. And there's been a big brouhaha on the internet this past week about it. And unfortunately, my angle on this is, you read the small print. My advice to anyone when they're buying a car is, look, I can tell you what it's like to drive. I can tell you what I get out of it. But your mileage will and may and will vary. And second, you should always, uncategorically, you should always double, triple, quadruple check before you make a decision to buy a car. You need to do more than just ask the dealer how far it will go. Let's move on. Nissan may have only just released a video of Carlos Ghosn, its CEO, driving around in an autonomous Leaf in an indoor facility. But last Saturday, Prime Minister of Japan went for a ride around Tokyo. This is insane, isn't it, Mark?
Especially because it was on real roads as well. We've gone from a month ago, Carlos going around inside a very controlled area, which was all demarcated, to, president of the country. Let's just send him out on the roads. Yeah. Absolutely amazing.
And the thing I find really amusing about this, I'm trying to find the video now. The thing I find really amusing about this all is that this poor guy, there's obviously a guy whose job it is to drive the Prime Minister around, okay? It's his job. And he's obviously been vetted. He's obviously been checked out by the secret police. He's an engineer, I would assume. But he looks so nervous. He's the one behind the wheel, okay? And you can see him taking off here, and he's driving along. And he's, obviously, he's trying to let go now. And he's looking at the car in a very nervous way. And just about now, he has to reach in and grab the steering wheel and correct the course for the car, which tells me something. It tells me that the technology is not quite there yet. But to be fair, Nissan said it's not going to be ready for the market until 2020, right?
Yeah. Well, that was at the very latest. That was his original. We will have a self-driving car by 2020, and he's now come out and gone, that's the latest point it's going to be.
And this was sorry, carry on.
Whether he meets that or not, I don't know.
No, this is a drive around the mall, essentially around the Japanese parliament. But this poor, I really feel for this engineer, because he's trying to be really polite and answer all the questions, but at the same time he's got his hands hovering over the steering wheel in case something goes wrong. And there's a couple of moments where the lights go off, and he readjusts the course, and actually in this version of the video it seems that bit has been taken out. It keeps flashing, so I think Nissan may have doctored that video, but the original video
I had to change the video on Friday when I came to do 10, and when we take the video and we put it into 10 as that little floating clip. The video that you had linked to was no longer on their channel. So I had to go to it, and there was a new video there with a different URL, which I had to switch out. So I suspect
that the original video, so the point of me saying, I didn't know this because I wasn't around on Friday, but the point of me showing this was to go, look, this poor guy, he's trying every now and then going, woohoo. Anyway, Volkswagen released details of the 2015 Volkswagen e-Golf. It's going to make its North American debut next month or later this month actually, at the LA Auto Show. 7.2 kilowatt onboard charger, which is good, 32 amps. 24.2 kilowatt hour battery pack, 86 kilowatt motor, but more driving modes than the Leaf. And of course, more importantly, those flappy paddle gearboxes. And I was talking to an engineer from Smart earlier on today who didn't like our Smart for 2 review. And he's told us off about
I'm
that.
Sorry, Mr. Man from Smart.
He said that a lot of people don't use the flappy paddles once they get used to driving the car. So maybe it's just you and me. But Volkswagen has released details of the 2015 e-Golf.
It's kind of a bit same old, unfortunately.
I think this will catch on.
Good.
It looks good because it looks like a Mark 7 Volkswagen Golf. It doesn't look like a weird Japanese car.
That blue line across the front, which I really like.
Got a blue line across the front, which is nice. These photos here are from Green Car Reports, so we'll just flip through some of these now. But it looks great, and it's got a decent trunk in it as well. Lots of decent amount of load space. It's not like the Focus,
which is interesting because it is a platform that it's the same platform as all the other cars on that line in terms of they're making petrol ones and diesel ones as well. So they've done something clever with the battery.
Well, this is based on the MQB platform, of course, which is their new platform in which they've designed everything from scratch. I mean, this is essentially what Ford did, but let's not forget that Ford's not got any aspirations in terms of the plug-in market, whereas Volkswagen says it wants to lead the plug-in industry.
Yeah, but they're not going to with this car.
I think people will buy it because the Volkswagen Golf has got just such a good name.
Well, I've
been talking to people about this, and you yourself said earlier on, I'm gonna bring you into this now, Mark. You said I want one.
I do, because I like Volkswagens. I like Volkswagen Golfs. They're the cars I've always driven, mainly because my family, various people in my family have worked for Volkswagen, so I'm hugely biased. But they're cars that I've always been around and I've always liked. But the stats of this car aren't the stats of a car that you're going to lead the market with. Unless they price this car at about 14, 15 grand, they're not going to lead the market with it.
Although I think they will give Nissan a hard time. I really do. I think your average run-of-the-mill consumer will go for a car that looks normal as opposed to a car that looks a bit weird. And don't forget,
if this was priced at the same as the Leaf, it will outsell the Leaf.
And don't forget, when someone walks into a Volkswagen dealership in the near future, they're not going to walk in and go, "Would you like a Golf, madam, sir? Or would you like this weird-looking EV or this strange-looking plug-in hybrid?" They're going to come in and they're going to go, "I want a Golf." Okay, you want a Golf. Do you want the petrol engine? Do you want the petrol sporty engine? So do you want the 1 point whatever it is, 1.1 litre? Do you want the 1.6? Do you want the 2 litre? Would you like the 2 litre diesel? Would you like the 2 litre diesel with stop go? Would you like the Blue Motion diesel that gets 78 miles to the gallon? Would you like the plug-in hybrid version, which is got a diesel or an electric engine plus a battery pack and can do both? Or would you like the all electric? And it's the only automaker I think we can genuinely say. I mean, Volkswagen's range of drivetrains is mind-boggling.
And I think it's almost taking the Tesla Model 1 that one step further. What we call the Tesla model, where you get a base spec and then you put things in as you want it. It's like that, but you start with the chassis of the car. Here's your car's chassis. It's the Mark 7 Golf chassis. Now, what drivetrain would you like? And you get 6 or 7 options. And it just, if they followed that through and then just didn't have set packages, you could literally spec up a car that was an EV with this charger and this type of motor and these wheels, and you could have, I think it would go very well. And they'd have presets, this is our standard electric build and our standard plug-in hybrid build. But I don't know, it could work very well for them.
It's going to be an interesting one, and I think based on what I've seen of Volkswagen, and Volkswagen is very open about this. They say, look, we're not leading the market at the moment. We have aspirations to. They've got the XL1, which is going to bring it some customers. They've got the XL1 twin, or they've got the XL1 engined Volkswagen Up twin, or whatever they're calling it, the one that's a plug-in hybrid, they've got the e-up as well, of course, and they've got Audi, the e-tron, which has a connection too. So, and this is not a new thing. I used to own a Volkswagen Golf City Stronger. It was an electric car made by Volkswagen in 1985. It's one of the few automakers who I think genuinely can claim to having produced electric cars for a significant amount of time. Again, I'm slightly biased on this one, but Volkswagen has asked us, Mark, you and me, has invited us back to its headquarters to drive one of its heritage cars, which has a stop-go engine from awesome. Like the 1990s, early 1990s stop-go engine with a manual gearbox and no clutch.
Did they beef up battery for the starter motor? Because, interesting. Very interesting.
Anyway, let's move on to the next story, and then we'll go to the ad break. We're actually on time today. I can't believe it, because we're just you and me.
It's always the guest's fault.
It's always the guest's fault. All right. Okay. Although Renault-Nissan CEO Carlos Ghosn confidently predicted more than 2 years ago that the Renault-Nissan alliance would sell 1.5 million cars by the end of 2016, he's actually turned around this week and gone, you know what? It's not going to happen.
By quite a long way.
By quite a long way. Mark, tell us about this one.
Bless him. I mean, it was at the time when he said it, we were kind of like, really? You think you can sell that many? And I mean, he stuck a large portion of his personal reputation, I think, within Renault-Nissan on electric cars. And it hasn't quite panned out the way he believed it would or thought it would. It's panned out. It's not been a disaster, and it's definitely not something they're going to stop doing, but it's not been the runaway success they wanted. They really wanted a Prius type success, whereas what's happened is they've kind of shared that success with every other manufacturer, I think.
I think it's fair enough to say that well, Carlos Ghosn saying it's nothing to do with the cars.
Yes,
it's to do with the infrastructure, and I hate to say it, but this is one thing that BMW said last week or the week before that I do agree with. It said that, look, there is a problem with these cars because people are perceiving that they cannot drive long distances, or they cannot charge away from home, despite being able to charge from home. They've got this idea in their head that they almost that they cannot buy a car unless they know they can charge. And I think Have
I told you my story?
Go on, carry on.
When I left my previous job that I was full-time employed in before I got ill, and I left there and I went to Zero Carbon World as a part-timer. And I was explaining what this charity did, and it installs charging stations. I had 2 or 3 people turn to me and go, "Oh, so you'll be able to get one of these charging stations installed at your house, and you won't have to drive somewhere to charge up." It's like,
wow.
They actually believed that if you had an electric car, every day or every other day you had to drive it somewhere and park it there for 8 hours to charge it up, and then you could drive it home.
Oh, that is insane. That is just...
If one person thinks that, or a couple of people think that, there must be more people in the UK who also think that, and around the world, that it uses special electricity or something. I don't know how it would work.
You know what? That is just insane, Mark. And I'm going to ask Aaron Crocker, who's just joined us. Hey, Aaron.
Hey, how's it going?
That's great. We were just dissing you at the beginning of the show. Don't worry about that.
So don't listen to the beginning of the show.
Don't listen to the beginning of the show. But Aaron, I mean, do you have that? Do people say that to you? Oh, you want to buy an EV? Great. But where are you going to charge it? How are you going to? Because for those who don't know, Aaron doesn't own an EV, but you're really into the tech, aren't you, Aaron?
Yeah. I'm halfway there, I guess, with the Prius. So sort of. Kind of, not really. It's funny. I get a lot of people who say to me, where would you charge? Where would you plug in? What happens, the normal things. What if you run out of battery and all of that? And, I try to tell people, well, first off, how much are you really going to drive in a day under normal circumstances? And then I tell people, well, you're leaving your house with a full tank, so to speak, quote unquote, every day. So, I don't really worry about that much, as long as I've purchased a car that meets my needs for 95% of my driving. There's really not much to worry about, especially, in a 2-car household. As you say, the Prius can always become the gas guzzler.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it was in our family for a long time.
Right, exactly. And then the second you talk about, well, there's initiatives to put in, other charge points and all of that, then all of a sudden people go, well, the politics and the government and subsidies, and it turns into a whole political discussion that I try to just stay out of.
Politics best stayed out of there, Aaron. So, I mean, we're talking about the fact that Carlos Ghosn, CEO of Renault-Nissan, has said that we're not going to meet those 1.5 million car target for 2016. And the reason is people aren't buying the cars, not because they're rubbish, not because they can't go far enough, but because they don't think they don't think there's the charging infrastructure. And it's almost as if some enterprising person, and I mean this wholeheartedly, it's almost as if some enterprising person needs to go around a neighborhood and put in fake charging stations. just so that people and put them in such a way that people go, okay, well, there's a charging station over there, I'll go buy an EV, and then they realize they don't need to charge away from home, so it's not a big issue unless you've got a long commute. I know, Aaron, you have a massive commute on Long Island, don't you?
Yeah, I have a pretty long commute. It's about 70 miles round trip, so yeah, it's a lot, but that hasn't stopped Tesla. Just saying.
No, it's true. Hasn't stopped Tesla in the slightest. Mark, what's the way? Is this about education? Is this about passing the buck to the charging manufacturers and infrastructure people?
I think he's got a point. I do honestly think he's got a point, and it comes up sort of pretty much number one on every survey of why won't you buy an EV? It's there's not enough charging, and then the surveys they do after people got the EVs, how much do you charge out and about? It's about 3% charge out and about. Everyone else charges at home. So it's this real perceived need rather than an actual need. So that has to be tackled with education. But I think it's also something that needs to be tackled with a security blanket. We need to just put charging stations everywhere. And we'll probably end up taking them out in 7 years' time when no one uses them. But regardless, I think they need to be there to get people to move over. My biggest issue with Carlos Ghosn saying it's the charging infrastructure is the 2 flagship cars, the Leaf and the Zoe. use completely different charging
They do.
technology
They
for
do.
no reason. And so he can't really, I don't know if he's really got a leg to stand on going, it's the charging infrastructure's problem, when he released 2 cars that use different networks.
And
so
it's,
they had to he doubled his own problem.
and for a while, it's worth noting, because we wrote a story this week about charging infrastructure. I don't know why I'm holding a pen. I'll put the pen down. For a while, we were it's green. It's slightly got a slight bluey greeny tint. So for a second, my green screen was making the pen look transparent. Where was I? Right. Yes. So for a while, you had the Renault Twizy, which was a 13 amp domestic UK plug, or 16 amp European plug. You then had the Kangoo ZE, which used a Type 1 connector, the J1772, as you can call them in the States. The Kangoo and the Fluence both had Type 1 connectors. Then you had the Zoe, which had a Type 2 connector. Yep. And now the second generation Kangoo has a Type 2 connector. The Twizy still has a 13 amp domestic plug, and the Fluence still has a Type 1.
Yeah.
Which is,
and then the Leaf is using CHAdeMO.
This is a massive standard problem. This is a massive standard problem, and it's.
In fact, I think Renault-Nissan have pretty much every standard except for the new CCS one going on.
Yeah, and I've got a funny feeling that the next generation Leaf will come up with CCS. I don't have anything to back that up, so don't no one think that I've got an inside line here to anybody, but that's my suspicion. But there we go. Let's go on to our Audible break. Mark, tell us about Audible.
I will. You always do this and don't give me time to type in the time code. Audible. Audible is a online system where you can pay them money every month. You do have to pay money, but in return for your money, you get credits, and then you can spend that credits on audiobooks. And they have a bajillion audiobooks. They don't have the best 4 audiobooks, which are currently on my website, but regardless of that, they have the second best bajillion audiobooks.
Chronovirus.
And you can go there and you can listen to anything. The reason I really love it is it has a huge collection of sci-fi books. It also has a huge collection of old BBC sitcoms and dramas, radio dramas, which I really like. If you go to www.audiblepodcast.com/transport evolved and sign up there, you'll get your first month for free. So even if you don't go forward, you get to keep the audiobook you get. And we get a little bit of money for sending you their way, which is awesome. And Nikki has come up with a pick of the week for this week.
This is a really weird one. Okay. This one was kind of, I picked this because of, we all like sci-fi here. Aaron, obviously, being an author of sci-fi, and
I have
me
no
being
idea what you're talking about.
a general consumer of sci-fi. Okay, so I'm going to read this. Leonard's father has been feeding him plutonium since the age of 6 in the hopes of making him the world's first bona fide superhero. First, he must pass the usual tests of manhood locked in the centuries-old tomb. The Maniston, a secret relic passed down for generations. Falling in love with a beautiful, compulsively suicidal Laura doesn't make his life any easier. And it keeps going on. And then 20 years later, he has to prove he is the hero. So this is about someone whose dad is a little bit like, he almost thinks a little bit like the Big Daddy in Kick-Ass. This parent who's got a dream for their kid and forces it on their kid. But the idea is, being fed plutonium as a child? Anyway, League of Somebodies. Here we go. Here you go. Slightly bizarre, slightly psychopathic father, I think. Anyway, League of Somebodies by Samuel Staton there. Great book. Give it a go. I have just finished, or I'm just in the middle, I've just almost finished Impulse by Stephen Gould, which is what was our recommendation last week. What are you reading at the moment, Aaron? Are you doing any Audible stuff?
Oh, yeah. I've had my Audible subscription for maybe about a year and a half now. And, as much as I love listening to podcasts, I wanted to change it up a little. So I ended up making Audible kind of my primary book devouring method. So I actually just finished a couple of weeks ago, 11/22/63 by Stephen King.
Oh, wow.
And,
it's meant to be very good.
Yeah, it was a little long, not Game of Thrones long, because that's just absurd. I can only do one of those a year. But yeah, it was pretty long, and it was really, really amazing. I gave it 5 stars, and it's probably one of only 2 books I did that for this year. So
wow.
I'm very excited, and the new Johnny Ive book is out, so I'm gonna have to
Does he
get
read that himself?
That would be really cool. But
The thing
yeah.
that you have to understand when creating a product is that it has to be beautiful.
We refine the audiobook, so it is unapologetically audio and nothing else.
That was almost too good, that. All right, moving on. All right, so we start this section 2, with some bad news. Tesla was back in the news earlier this week after an industrial accident at its Fremont facility where the Model S is made. There was an accident involving an aluminum pressing thing, or aluminium, depending on which country you're in. And 3 guys were taken to hospital with second-degree burns, one of which was released almost immediately. The other one, I think, stayed overnight and then was released. The third one, I think, but from what I've heard by the grapevine, is going to be in hospital for about a month. Elon Musk visited them very quickly in hospital to make sure they got the best possible help. But there was some really sensationalist reporting about this. Now, we made a decision, didn't we, Mark? We did a breaking story as soon as we knew it was happening.
Yeah.
And then kind of I went to bed, and then the very next morning I did a kind of a wrap-up story going, this is what's happened. We wish everybody the best. And we made a decision at that point. We weren't going to go any further with reporting of this. But some people have been reporting this again and again and again and again and again and again and again. Some of the American news outlets, and I don't know if it's just because I don't get cable news, but specifically in the Bay Area, were doing this kind of... They had a live camera on the Tesla factory.
What were they watching for?
I don't know, but it was one of the local news channels had this.
And here we see the river of liquid aluminum coming out of the factory. I don't understand. The story was there was an accident. These people are hurt and injured, and they're now in hospital recovering. That's the story. And I hate to talk about it in such a cold point of view in terms of news cycles and stuff, but that's the story. There's nothing else there. It was tragic, but to go on and try and make it anything else is kind of disrespectful to the people involved, surely.
Yeah. And I think the way that some news outlets were even going, I have to admit I was playing GTA shortly after this story broke. So I kind of typed the story up and then went back to GTA. But I was watching in the corner of my eye about how this story was reported. And the next morning, there were a number of people sort of coming on, and there were stories linking, this is more bad news for Tesla after a industrial accident, and this ties in really badly with all the bad luck they're having with fires, and is Tesla really safe? Tesla's now got a really terrible safety record. No, it hasn't. I mean, safety records, it's a factory, and if California is anything like the UK, you have to fill out an appropriate accident form when an accident happens, and then you just kind of get on with it. Accidents happen in industrial settings, don't they?
Yeah.
Aaron, is this common in the US? I mean, are we just losing it?
Sensationalist journalism?
Yeah.
Yeah, just a little. It's one of those things where when you look at Tesla the way they are right now, they're kind of on top when it comes to EVs and Elon Musk. And, I know you've said it a lot of times, but this parallel between Tesla and Apple, Steve Jobs and Elon Musk is absolutely there. Elon Musk has this personality. He has this company that's doing something revolutionary. And there's stock involved, there's investors involved. And I think it just comes down to a point where people, they want to get a piece of the action. It's link bait. Hey, we're going to report on this because we can get Tesla involved in the story. People are going to click on it. At the same time, Tesla is going to have a lot of detractors because people are saying, they took government money and it's for rich people and it's, subsidized for rich people and all this stuff, negating the fact that, hey, a couple of people got hurt, just like, Mark said. It's like kind of disrespectful to people who legitimately were hurt. And I don't know. I think that until there is really another big EV competitor out there to kind of keep up with Tesla, or until Tesla really just becomes this company where people go, enough, like they're just here, stop making everything a story, that's when it's going to kind of settle down. Until then, unfortunately, I think this is, someone babbles Tesla in their sleep, I think there's going to be a news story about it just because it gets clicks, it gets eyeballs. People, the thing with the fires, I think is ridiculous. You
Yeah.
know, I even tweeted about it when the last one happened a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, "Oh no, next time there's a Ford fire, I want the CEO of Ford to, come out and put out a
Yeah,
statement. Why
yeah.
is my Ford on fire? That's unsafe."
Yeah.
Well,
enough
Chelsea
of it.
started that Twitter hashtag, which got fairly successful, which was not a Tesla, where
Yes.
it was all around the world. People were tweeting about car fires that were happening that day,
That were
and
not
it would
a
always
Tesla.
end with not a Tesla.
That was brilliant, wasn't it?
Yeah,
All right.
one of those was a really big accident here. It was a Tesla owner on Long Island, and that was the one that Tesla kind of talked about. And they tweeted about it. And just seeing the wreck and knowing kind of the types of roads that guy was on, the fact that he walked out with just a couple of bumps and scratches was very, very impressive. That type of accident around here, you're definitely going to the hospital.
Yeah. It's the it's sad that people, I suppose, kick someone when they're down, or kick a company when they're down. All right, let's move on. BMW i3 may be just launching in Europe, but over in Japan, the car will go on sale with a CHAdeMO connector, where the CCS charging connector is in Europe, and the J1772 socket hidden under the trunk, because it has a frunk. The BMW i3 does actually have a frunk, but it's a tiny frunk big enough for your puncture repair kit and maybe your laptop bag. But it seems a bit of a kludge for a car that's supposed to be luxury, Mark.
Kludge. I never heard that word before.
It's kind of like a
Clunky.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a good word. It makes sense in the Japanese market because CHAdeMO is everywhere there. It makes sense from that point of view, but it again is just another one of those things that's highlighting that charging networks are so disparate and so confused and so non-standard that it's just annoying, I guess. And it's interesting that they've done it that way. They've put the CHAdeMO on it going to Japan, because there is, if you look at the rapid charge networks in other places, especially the UK at the moment, there's far more places to charge up with CHAdeMO than there is CCS. But they didn't here.
My question is, why aren't they just doing this all over? Because there's more CHAdeMO in the US, there's more CHAdeMO in it seems incredibly stupid and a little bit backward to go, okay, we're backing this new standard, of which there are no public charging stations in the UK yet that support this standard, but we're backing it. We're going to support it in the US. There's no public charge. I think there's one now on the West Coast, but we're supporting it because it's the best. And over in Japan, well, okay, you've got lots of CHAdeMO. Okay, well...
It's because it's a European standard, I guess.
It just seems... It's just...
But I do agree.
It's just so backwards. It would be.
I would like to repeat myself from earlier.
Go on.
It worked for Tesla.
It did.
Just saying.
It did work for Tesla.
Tesla proved upon it, and they've made a charging standard that can do nearly 3 times as much power as everyone else.
Yeah.
Right.
If you're going to go out on your own, you make sure you've got a better product when you do it.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say is that, with Tesla went, screw you guys, this standard sucks, we're going to do a whole new standard. And even in Europe, they went 3-phase because 3-phase is everywhere. But, the DC rapid charging networks that we already have in the UK are no better than the CCS standard. They're both 50 kilowatts at the moment. And so you kind of go, okay, so you're going to be putting in new charging stations that have an extra connector on them, but offer you the same power as the existing infrastructure. Why are you jumping through all these hoops? It's all to do with standards.
Type 2 that has in the standard the ability to deliver DC across its standard pins.
Yes. It's so stupid. It would be like, Aaron, you coming over to England for a holiday, and because Apple happened to be launching a new product, and you're 5 hours ahead. I'm going to go to the West End. I'm going to go and buy a new Apple product in the West End, and buying it, and it's an iPhone, and it's got the dock connector on it, and then getting it home to New York and discovering that in New York, and the pins are different, and you can't do that anymore, and you can't take it from place one to place two. This is the kind of BS that we were playing in the computer industry 25, 30 years ago. And I think it's something that we need to just hammer out. Anyway, moving on before I have a little angry moment. Elon Musk said this week that there won't be an official recall of Model S following those 3 fires. Unless, of course, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration says there has to be one. He's reiterated that the luxury sedan is by far the safest car on the market. Tesla's fires 1 in every 8,000, as opposed to a normal car, which is what, Mark?
1 in every 1,300.
Yes,
Whew.
which is, I think there's
That was
not
good
much
memory
else we
recall.
can say on that, really. Kia has finally released specs for the 2014 Soul EV. This is going to be a compliance car in the US. We have absolutely no idea what the availability is going to be. But New York and New Jersey have the Californian standards, don't they, Aaron?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. Also, obviously, I think Washington State and Oregon use them as well. So chances are it's going to be an east-west thing. 81.4 kilowatt motor, 27 kilowatt hour battery pack. Now, this is interesting. They're claiming 100 kilowatts from a CHAdeMO quick charge station and half an hour quick charge, which makes no sense based on the maths there. No. Mark, do we think this is a member of the press corps who just didn't understand making an factual error in their press release?
But it's hard to think because the numbers don't make sense. I mean, the standard, I suppose they could have been 100 amps because the CHAdeMO could give 100 amps at 400 volts, which would be 40 kilowatts.
Maybe that's what it is.
About add up. Yeah, I do. The way they had it written doesn't make sense because the CHAdeMO standard just doesn't deliver that much power unless they've adapted the CHAdeMO standard.
I think I don't think I even mentioned it in this story. Yes, I did. And I've said Kia has said rather than. Yes. But when you did the 10, you did exactly what I was hoping you were going to do, which is, that doesn't make sense. The onboard charger will charge the car in 4 to 5 hours, which points us at probably 7.2 kilowatt charging. Pricing is yet to be made available, but Kia has already said, look, it's going to be priced not to make the car, not to increase demand, but just to, the price of the car will reflect its technology, I think is what they hinted.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, so it's going to be a compliance car, going to cost a lot of money. In terms of range, they're claiming 200 kilometers on the Japanese test cycle, which again harks back to this argument that's raging on Twitter right now around test cycles. Some people are blaming automakers and saying the automakers are effectively lying about their range. Others are saying it's the dealer's fault. The dealers are lying about the range. I said, obviously people need to do their research, but it's a standards thing. These are standard set in the US. These are standard set in Japan. These are standard set in Europe. These are standards that must be adhered to. If I'm an automaker and someone goes, okay, here's the standard for your range. This is what all your competitors are sticking to. They're all going, this is the range according to this test cycle, and you've got 2 choices, which is tell them stick to the legally required test cycle, or be a little bit more
make your car sound worse.
Make your car sound worse than it is. You're gonna stick to the standard. It would take everybody signing up, every automaker being lobbied to go. Okay, we need to change the standards, and automakers know that the standards need to change. The same is happening in the States. It's happening in Japan too. So, on the Japanese test cycle, about 125 miles per charge. We reckon, though, 80 to 90 is the real world range, don't we, Mark?
Especially, it's essentially a wall at the front of the car.
Yeah, there's very
drag
little
coefficient doesn't
there.
exist. It's a drag plane, what it is.
And you'll notice our next story, Aaron, is lined up just ahead of your Chronovirus trailer. So I don't know if you got to see this one, but this is awesome. Okay, so you're an MIT researcher and you're playing around with viruses, as you do, and you discover this virus can be genetically modified to I suspect the only I don't know if it's metabolizing it, Mark, or what, but it's grabbing particles of magnesium from water, okay, and it can actually then bring in absorb these particles and builds itself like a little shell around the virus.
It makes a home for itself.
It makes a home for itself. So the virus is in the middle, and it builds this nanowire around itself, about the width of a human blood cell, which is insanely small. And
it's spiky as well,
and it's
because
spiky
of the shape of
because
magnesium.
of the shape of the magnesium. But they also put palladium in it as well to increase its reactivity.
Spikinessity.
Yes, and they've made this M13 biovirus into a nanowire that they can put into lithium oxide battery, or lithium oxygen batteries, that can have up to 3 times the energy density, but also immense charge discharge capabilities. It's incredible. So
It's cool.
they're talking. Tesla's already talked about lithium air batteries, 400 miles between recharges. The challenge now is getting these batteries to recharge through large life cycles. These scientists said they've only done it through 50 charge-discharge cycles. And I'm not sure if that's because it gave up after 50 charge cycles, or if it was just because that's all they decided to test for.
Lithium air is in use. You can, I think hearing aid batteries are lithium air batteries.
Are lithium air, but you can't recharge them. But Aaron, 400 miles, would that be enough to get to work and back?
Yeah, 400 miles would be absolutely plenty. And the fact that, this is something where they're saying that right now, even though it's still almost theoretical at this point, even if it's half of that, it's this new technology that has just endless amounts of potential. And the fact that it is like, I don't want to say biofuel, but naturally occurring.
Yeah.
And you can actually manipulate it. All I can say is science. It's amazing.
Science for the win. Science
Seriously,
rocks.
It's just crazy that you could do this, especially, there's a set amount of lithium on the planet. It's kind of a finite resource. We can, recycle it and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I think this is just really, really cool. You don't really, aside from diesel, you don't really see people coming around saying, oh, we have a new way to make gasoline that doesn't involve, dead dinosaurs.
Yeah, yeah. So they're engineering, it's a magnesium palladium mix, isn't it, Mark?
Yes.
I flunked chemistry. Well, I didn't flunk chemistry. I didn't really flunk anything at school, but chemistry was kind of one of my worst subjects.
It's cool. It's going to be hard to scale it up, and I think they've admitted it's going to be hard to scale it up, if at all. But what it suggests to me is that battery technology and battery enhancement is a huge field nowadays, and it's what we're going to need if we want to move to renewable energy sources. We need the battery storage to be able to take the power when it's in abundance and store it for when we actually need it. And so it's a technology that makes sense. And even silly, really futuristic things like going into space, you need massive batteries because you don't want your reactor stopping. You want to have power. So it's in the next sort of 40, 50 years, battery technology will go on leaps and bounds purely from our need as a species.
Yeah, it's going to be very cool. Right, Aaron, I can't bring myself to do the trailer for Chronovirus with you sitting there. So tell us about Chronovirus.
In a world. Should I just start it like that? Chronovirus, you guys here, and listeners of Transport Evolved, have heard about Chronovirus to no end. And Nikki, I thank you for supporting it and working with Mark also through In-Ear Entertainment. Yeah. We've had a great run so far. So Chronovirus, for any of you sci-fi space junkies out there, it's a really cool short story all about, your past maybe coming back to haunt you and maybe happening not like you remember it.
Yeah. I hate to say it, you completely... You reeled me in all the way through the story, and the last person,
right?
I'm not gonna use any names. Last person, you reeled me in, and you think, okay, this is gonna be okay, right? And then you just twisted my gut, bam! And then that was the end of the book, and I'm like,
No!
It's a bit like.
I was just going to say, as someone who had to listen to the audiobook maybe 15 or 20 times, it's something that actually every time I listened to it, I was picking up on a new nuance of the story, which is awesome. When writing can do that, when through multiple listens or multiple readings, you're picking up on new threads and new traits and new things that were said that can be taken in a different way. It really shows the talent of the writer, and it's one of the reasons I wanted to make it an audiobook.
So stroking Aaron's ego there, you've got another book now, haven't you, Aaron?
Yeah, there's actually a tie-in story that is part of an anthology right now. It's called Themethology Invasion, and the tie-in story is called Chronovirus Fall of the Horizon. So if you search Amazon, unfortunately Amazon doesn't allow multiple people to be on a book after, I think, 3 or 4 authors. So it's not, if you search my name, it's not there. But if you search Themethology Invasion, it'll come up, and you get a little more coronavirus coming at you, and there'll be definitely a lot more to come. But yeah, if you're into space and sci-fi and some time travel and just some really cool action, either story is a lot of fun, and I love hearing the feedback from you guys and everyone else. And I can't thank you enough for the support. It really does mean a lot, and it just proves everybody gets lucky once. So
all right, well, someone who's not going to get lucky, apparently, according to the EFF, is Renault Zoe drivers. The EFF has come out now, got its knickers in a little bit of a twist, I think, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, talking about digital rights management in electric cars. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Renault Zoe here in the UK, you buy the car and then you lease the battery pack. Like all of Renault's cars, you cannot buy any of Renault's cars with a battery pack. You have to buy the car and then lease the battery pack. It's like a service plan. If at some point you decide not to renew your contract, they basically stop your car from charging, which is not. I mean, the EFF's kind of going, oh well, this is DRM going crazy because people are buying the car and then the car's being rendered useless, which I can understand. But you're not buying the battery pack; you're leasing the battery pack. So it's essentially the same as leasing. I mean, no person I know would lease a house and then stop paying the rent. And then their landlord comes in and goes, hey, I'm going to kick you out. No. That's
DRM.
That's DRM, that is, mate. I'm not having that. Mark?
Well, I'm really confused as to why this story is suddenly a story. So, I mean, if you go back, Transport Evolved was a year and a half ago when the Zoe was the next big thing and we were just getting all the information about it. We were talking about this back then, about how there would have to be some mechanism, some button they could push that stops your car working, that stops the battery. And we had a whole discussion about whether that would be an instant thing, like you could be driving home from work and they press a button and suddenly your car stops because it won't take power from the battery anymore. And what would happen if you parked in an underground garage where there was no cell signal, so the message couldn't get through to your car? We had all these discussions a year and a half ago. And suddenly this week, all these reports come, and you sent me the link, and I remember reading it, and I remember saying to you, this isn't a story. We know about this. Yeah. This is, so I don't understand why it's suddenly a big deal. And I'm not convinced it is DRM. DRM to me is something that stops you using a product you have bought in any way you want. You haven't bought the battery. In this case, you've bought the car, exactly, and you've bought the shell and the metal. Well, you can still use the shell and the metal. I'm sure Renault won't mind if you put the car into neutral and push it around, but it is effectively useless without the battery. But that's not DRM because you've never bought the battery.
Right. Well, the real question is, can you purchase the battery pack after the lease?
No.
Can you put in a replacement battery, even though that would just defeat?
Yeah, I guess you probably could. I guess you probably could. I mean, Renault would probably refuse to service it, but I mean, Nissan has said. So this could happen to Renault, considering how Nissan and Renault are essentially the same company. Right. Nissan has said, look, if you lease your car and you're on a battery lease scheme, whether it's in the US or the UK, after your car has done a certain number of miles, will offer you a chance to buy the battery out. So at that point you go, okay, I've driven the car for eight years. I'm still on this second battery pack. Come on. Fork over the brown. I'll fork over the brown. I just want to do it. Anyway, so I agree with Mark. I think it's a non-story. We'll probably cover it this week, though. We'll probably do an opinion piece this week, Mark, talking about that.
Yeah.
But I mean, I put it in because it has just become this big news story. Anyway, moving on. Nissan ENV200 minivan. It's not just going to be a taxi in New York. It's going to come all around the world. And I got confirmation today from a Nissan, someone in Nissan press saying, yep, there is going to be a passenger version of this, not just a cargo version. So you will be able to, as a family, go and buy this as a minivan. Aaron, this is not necessarily the coolest looking car on the planet, and it's certainly not your DeLorean. But, you know, I mean, can you imagine if Nissan turned around and go, okay, we've managed to increase the range a bit. Do you reckon this would be a good family car for you guys?
It's huge. Looking at it, I don't think this car was really designed to just be for a family car. When I first saw the rollout of this, because the gas version that they're rolling out as taxis looks nearly identical. I look at that and I go, okay, that's a great people mover.
Yeah.
It's big, it's roomy. When you're a taxi, people have luggage and bags and all this stuff. There's, you may have 2 people getting in. You may have, 6 people getting in. It's great. For a minivan, I think it's great that it's electric. I think it's one more option. There's, as Chelsea Sexton says on Twitter all the time and on the show, we need more options. It's not charging. We just need more cars out there. So I think another option is great. But something like this for me personally, it's like, I'm a family of 4. I don't really need something that big. But more minivans, I think would be cool.
I can see it working. I mean, from a minivan point of view, if it steers well and it's not too big, I could see myself getting a minivan alongside something a little bit more sensible for longer distances. This would be great for trips around town. If I lived in an urban area and I needed to run the kids to soccer practice and to band, and I had to pick their friends up from school, and I had the dogs in the car as well, and I had to do the shopping run and blah, 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 this would be a great second car.
Or if you're running a business.
Or if you're running a business, yeah.
Pulling things back and forth, especially if it's a lot of minivans now are modular.
Yeah.
Seats fold under the floor, or you could take them out. If it's modular like that, I mean, that would just be fantastic.
Yeah, it would be. It would be. Talking about a car that more people want, though, i3 deliveries have started in Germany, Mark.
Ooh.
Now, we've had i3 deliveries to about a dozen owners in Germany so far. These deliveries are now meaning that the BMW i3s are out on the roads. There's been some confusion about the range extender and about how that works. We still don't know yet exactly how it works, and I think we're going to wait and see. My advice is wait and see how people get on, because certain people have said, BMW range extenders we can drive for almost an inordinate amount of time with the range extender running, and it will be fine. BMW said to me when I asked them, it's not really designed to run as a long distance car with a range extender. And if you think about it, actually, the mechanics of it just don't bode well. It's a 600-ish cc engine, 2-cylinder 600cc-ish engine. It's not going to have a huge amount of power to push along. Was it 800 kilos, 900 kilos along? That's not going to give you a huge amount of power, is it, Mark?
No, it's enough to keep you rolling, I think, on a flat surface. It seems. It's interesting. I really want to sit down with BMW and talk this through, because it seems what I've been told when speaking to reps at various events we've been to isn't matching now what people are telling me they're being told when they've gone to buy the car and test drive the car. So I'm stuck in the middle of unfortunately not having any sources, because it's all me talking to people.
Yes, yeah.
And trying to tell people that I don't think, I'm fairly sure they've told me that the Rex shouldn't be used every day and can't be used all the time and should only be used as an emergency. And then I've got people turning around saying, well, the person in the dealership told me I could run it all the time and it's not a problem to use it whenever I want. And I'm stuck in the middle in this weird journalistic bubble I've never really been in before, not knowing what I can say and what I can't say, because I don't want to give people wrong information.
And I think one of the things is, I have to say this, dealers are not, you don't, certainly in my family, you never 100% trust what the dealer tells you. Not because you think all dealers are crooked, but because dealers generally don't know everything there is to know about a car, especially a new one. I mean, I've had people tell me with the Prius before, oh yeah, the Prius will do 3 miles in all electric mode. I was lucky if I got a mile out of mine sometimes, you know? And then they'll tell you things like, well, I mean, even our Chevy Volt dealer, really nice guy. Yeah, it'll have Bluetooth streaming. And then, you know, a couple of months down the line, our Bluetooth streaming isn't working. Oh yeah, it's not in that model. Sorry, we've just found out. Even my local Leaf dealer, who wasn't my local Leaf dealer, but the one I go to, I sometimes ask them questions that they can't answer because the question I'm asking is just too specific. They don't know, you know, and I think it is a tough one. It's a very tough one, and I think we're going to have to wait and see. But I'm going to stick to what my brain tells me from a physics point of view, which is if you want an i3 Rex and you want to run it for a long distance time, I suspect you have to turn on the Rex as soon as you leave. So at that point, you've got your battery pack, and then you've got the Rex ticking over, which just supplements it slows down the power drain from your battery. How does that sound, Mark?
Yeah, that links with something else I've been told. I've been told when speaking to the people that if you wanted to make a trip at the full 170-mile range of the car plus gasoline tank, that you need to switch the Rex on manually when you first start out. Because if you wait until it gets down to whatever percentage it switches itself on, which I think is about 20-odd%, it won't be able to take you the full distance. Or it will, but on severely reduced power, and they recommend you switch it on. But again, I'm fairly sure that was a conversation I had with someone, so I can't point to a piece of text that BMW have written down saying, this is how you use the Rex. And that's annoying.
Unfortunately, engineers are very difficult to come by, and I suspect, like most automakers, getting hold of an engineer to ask them that question is pretty tough. So if you're an engineer for BMW and you know the answer, get in touch with us, because we'd like to tell people. All right.
Yeah, and that's what it is. I'd like to have all the facts so I can talk to people, because people are asking us these questions. And I don't want to tell them something that's wrong, because I don't have anything against BMW. I don't want to impact their sales, but I also don't want people to buy a car that's not right for them.
And I think at the end of the day, you have to acknowledge that most people won't need the Rex, because most people won't do the distance. The car, you know, I mean, someone like Aaron would need it, but then Aaron wouldn't be buying a BMW i3.
Yeah, no, that you know, something like that. If you're gonna do it, you got to really make sure the car fits your needs. For me, there would be no reason to spend, especially the money on a BMW, to drop that kind of money. Just nah.
I mean, for Aaron's ideal plug-in car right now, based on what I know about him, would be probably the Prius plug-in hybrid, and then or the Tesla Model S, because the Prius plug-in hybrid, yeah, it's only got 11 miles of EV range, but that's enough for the weekend to get you roundabout to the shops. But then for those long distance trips into work and back, you know, if you're doing 10 of those 70 miles in EV mode, and then 60 miles at 70 miles per gallon or 60 miles per gallon, that's going to be better than, say, the Volt, which will do 40 miles. And then you'll have, you know, I mean, we went to London and back over the weekend, and our lifetime gas mileage on our Volt went from 180 something to 130 something, because we didn't get to charge up. We did 40 miles in EV mode, and the rest was in, you know, so it's horses for courses. And it comes back to what I was saying at the top of the show, which is, if you are buying an EV and you are making an investment, you should do your homework. It's the same as if you're buying a high-end computer or a low-end computer or a new phone or and maybe I'm just a geek and this is what geeks do and normal people don't do this. But it can sometimes, even things like shoes or bicycle helmets or cookware, you know, you go online, you look at the reviews, you go, okay, which one of these has the features that I want? Which one suits my needs best? And, you know, this is something that Aaron on your show, on the Geekcast, you guys talk about again and again and again and again.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where I almost wish that companies who were selling EVs would actually let you take the car home with you as some sort of like rental system. And you get to use the car for 3 days, 4 days, let's say, of your typical use. Take the car, bring it to work. Take the car and use it on the weekend. Use it the way you normally will. And, you know, you have some sort of emergency service if you run out of charge or whatever. Just something to give people peace of mind so that people will know if that car is right for them. Now, obviously, there's the other end of that where it's kind of a risk where someone may decide, well, oh, I really can't get this car when they could have made a sale with a customer not having all of the information. But if someone said to me, hey, you can borrow a Nissan Leaf for 3-4 days and take it to work and see how you like it and how the range is and all of that, I could potentially take them up on that and say, okay, let me find out. Maybe it does have the range and things like that. It's a very hard decision to buy a car when you're on the fence of, does this work for me? And
yeah,
a 15-minute, a half-hour test drive is not nearly enough.
And that's one of the things that we're doing with our show, with the quick charge
Right.
and the charged up, is that we are doing exactly that. We're giving it like, this is our first impression and this is after a week with the car. And I think you're quite right. I mean, some dealers in the UK are now starting to offer that kind of unofficially. You have to
It's a great
kind of
idea.
talk them into it, but some dealers will let you do it and others won't. And I think it's something that needs to happen everywhere. And I think
It's also why we get cars slightly later than everyone else, and our reviews come out slightly later because we have to wait until they give it us for a whole week.
And I will say at this
Right.
point, BMW has said they cannot give us a car.
Ever. They didn't even give us a.
Jeez.
No,
in
they
the next
didn't
couple
say.
of
They didn't say. No, I asked for a car for a week. I told them what we wanted to do with it, and they went, "We cannot book any cars out at this time. We're having to say no to most people. We're having to say no to you." So there we go. So no quick charge, no charged up on that one. Sorry, tough.
When well,
Since May 2012, the West Coast Electric Highway across Washington and Oregon, across Washington and Oregon states. I was talking about. I should know these two because these are the two that at some point we may end up moving to or may not. More than 10,000.
Oregon, die of dysentery.
I think they've
You have to
solved that
ford the
now.
river. Come on.
I think they've solved that now. More than 10,000 quick charge events have been delivered to customers across Washington, the Washington part of the West Coast Electric Highway, between 14 quick charge units. So in 18 months, more than 10,000 quick charge events. That shows how popular EVs are becoming on the West Coast, doesn't it? It's phenomenal. It's absolutely fantastic, and it shows
Given the amount of people that have them in California. I mean, I hate to say it, but I'm not surprised. I wish New York would kind of drag some of that over, and we could get some of that, because anytime I pass any building, parking lot, mall, or anything, I always have my eyes open to see. It's like, hey, is there any chargers? And aside from one at the Leviton corporate offices that I had used once, I have never stumbled upon a charger out in public. And I'm like, come on, like, let's do it.
And these are quick chargers. These are CHAdeMO quick chargers. These are the ones that you can stop and refill in 30 minutes, and you'll be, to 80% capacity. There's a little disclaimer there, and you can carry on. But 10,000 quick charge events. Now, the cynic in me goes, okay, so for every of those 10,000 quick charge events, most of them have probably been Leaf owners coming up, charging to 80%, unplugging and plugging back in and charging back up again, Mark.
So really, it's 5,000 different charging sessions.
Still pretty good though, right?
It is, yeah. It's very good.
And finally, I've got my shirt on, my check shirt, because I am a farm girl at heart, and therefore I like pickup trucks. I always have had a bit of a thing about pickup trucks. One of these days, I'm going to buy myself an old Chevy stepside pickup truck and convert it to electric. If I ever move to America, that's what I will do. If my wife ever lets me, but don't tell her I said that. Tesla has been very public about its planning to build a pickup truck, but Elon Musk this week confirmed that it's essentially going after the Ford F-150, the US's favorite pickup truck, favorite consumer vehicle or passenger vehicle, and he's basically gone, look, that's the best-selling car in America, and if people are voting that that's their car, then that's the car we have to deliver. So essentially, F-150 style EV. Mark, yummy. No. No.
We've definitely
No.
got the space for the batteries.
Yeah. Aaron, would it do it for you? Do you know anyone who has an F-150?
I don't personally know anyone with an F-150, but given the amount of, trucks and SUVs and everything on the road, I think, the Model X is a great car. I think from, what we've seen, I think Tesla kind of going into this market of what the market is bearing, I think is a really cool idea. But at the same time, I'm kind of rooting for them to also do their own thing. Like the Model S is kind of, it's like the BMW Audi competitor, but at the same time, you look at it and it's like a totally different horse. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. So it's like, all right, you're following the crowd, but don't follow it too much.
Don't follow it too much. I would like, I don't necessarily want a big pickup truck. I just like, and this is really sad, I like the coziness of the 2-seat pickups, because we used to have little Mazda 200s, which are like 2-seat pickup trucks, and essentially the precursor to the 2-wheel drive Ford Rangers. And I like those because you could sit in the front and it was nice and cozy with the person you were sitting with, and it was nice and warm in the winter, and you just felt, and you could see all around you, and it wasn't a big boomy car. I think I like the noise because it was nice and contained as opposed to big and echoey. I'm a bit weird. Anyway, and finally, if pickup trucks, F-150s don't do it for you, how about this? The Unicub electric personal mobility device, which Honda has just refined. Now, okay. How do I describe this, guys? It's a bit like what would happen if a Segway had sex with a unicycle.
It looks like a penguin.
It looks a bit like a penguin.
If a Segway had sex with a penguin, maybe.
So it's got one wheel. So it's a self-balancing thing that you sit on and you lean.
I love monowheels.
It to do this. It's a monowheel. And you lean it forward and it goes forward. And you lean it back and it stops. You can lean it side to side and it will change direction.
I'd have one because I love monowheels.
The word "why"
love
comes to
monowheels.
mind.
But the Unicub, the idea being it's going to follow in from Honda's Super Cub motorcycle, which has been proven time and time again to be one of the world's most indestructible motorbikes, motorbikes, because the Cub 50 is like a moped, the 150. They have different models. The 100, they had the 120 as well. And I remember watching a show on the Discovery Channel once where they dropped one of these motorbikes from the top of a multi-story building, like a high-rise block of flats. They dropped it. Then they just walked downstairs, got on it, got it running, and off it went. I mean, it was a bit dented, but it just kept running. But you know what I think of when I see this? You've seen WALL-E, right?
Oh yeah.
So in WALL-E they have these little kind of mobility things that move them around. Little chairs. Is this not the precursor to Obese Nation? Moving around on these little tiny things with tiny seats. I just don't get it.
Yeah, it's, oh man. I mean, it's one of those things where you think the idea is pretty cool that you can have something like this, but I mean, where would you ever really use this? It's kind of like the Segway. Like the Segway is such a cool idea, and I've ridden it a couple of times, and it's a lot of fun. But then you think, where are you going that you're ever going to really get to use this thing? And this is just.
The only thing I can think of, Aaron, is that this is a product for the boomers, okay? Okay, it's being advertised by 20, 30-somethings who are unbelievably thin and slim. But I think this is for the boomers. And it brings me very nicely to one of your favourite films, Back to the Future. Now, in Back to the Future 2, there is a special device, isn't there, that Marty's dad gets in because he damages his back playing racquetball or something. Is that right?
Yeah, playing golf.
Playing golf, that's right. And it kind of hovers alongside him, or he kind of makes sure
he's
that
like hanging from
upside down. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Maybe this is the Back to the Future equivalent. I mean,
God, I hope not.
Would this be at home in Back to the Future?
Yeah, I don't know. Man, if this is like you even said from WALL-E, if this is the point where we're all too fat and lazy to just get up and walk somewhere, then the future's in a lot of trouble.
I know. I mean,
I think it says a lot that you two only see the different types of transport as walking as I need to go somewhere slowly. and long distance, I must go there fast. Why can't you go a long distance slowly? This would be, I want to go for, my local town is an hour's walk away. Well, this would be perfect for that. I don't particularly want to jump in my car and drive 4 miles.
Yeah, but every time you hit a pothole, Mark, it's going to be like that.
It's going to be wonderful. It's the precursor to Claptrap from Borderlands, and therefore it is awesome.
Ride a bike. That's all.
Oh, yeah, no, seriously. I mean, like, you know, today I hadn't gone out for a walk and it got to about 4 o'clock and I'm like, I'm feeling really rubbish right now. What's wrong? And I looked down at my Fitbit and I'd done very few steps and I went, you know what? I'm going to take the dogs out. Took the dogs out, had a nice long walk, feel fantastic.
There you go.
So, you know, bicycles, walking, you cannot beat good old-fashioned human locomotion. Okay, I'll put the bicycle in there too. I know it's not necessarily, but a Segway that you sit on. I mean, even a Segway, you know, you're standing on a Segway, you're working your core muscles, but something you sit on like this and go...
Jeez. Oh, man. Technology.
There we go.
If Honda's listening, I will test this for you. Send one to me. I'll test it. It's going to be awesome.
Oh, there we go. Right. That really is it. Thanks very much to everyone for joining us today. Don't forget you can catch up with us during the week. We're going to have another charged up this week, aren't we, Mark?
Yes, I will get the zone. I'm downloading the video that Nikki forgot to put on my hard drive when I was around at her house. It's 27 gigabytes of video. It's been downloading now for over 24 hours. I've got another 6 hours to go, and then I shall have it.
And then Mark needs to figure out how to get his 2006 iMac to actually render HD video. We need to get Mark a new computer, so we might be doing another crowdfunding soon for an editing machine. Not quite as fantastical as mine, but pretty good, so that we can help Mark edit the videos, because he's the lead video editor. You know, it's brilliant. We'll be back on in between that. We'll be back on Friday with TEN, which all of you are loving. And as soon as we've got our artwork, which has been produced by the fantastic Jen Delari, we are going to be putting up a video version of the show as a podcast. So you'll be able to subscribe to TEN. And we'll also do an audio version, again, once we've got the audio, once we've got the artwork, we will do that too. And we'll be back next week at the usual time of 7 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, which is 2 p.m. on the East Coast, 11 a.m. on the West Coast. And that's it, isn't it, Mark?
That's it for this week.
Thanks to Mr. Crocco for joining us, Aaron Crocco. Do check his website out at www.aaroncrocco.com. And he's also got his link to the Geekcast with a fantastic Mr. Goza.
Thanks for having me on, guys. I always appreciate it. We have a lot of fun.
And we should do a crossover in the new year.
Yeah, that's always a fun one. We got to be amply prepared and drunk for when that show happens.
Yep, and Chelsea as well.
Yeah,
Chelsea needs to be, well, yeah, Chelsea just is great. Anyway, until then, folks, don't forget to plug in. See you soon. Take care and bye.